I gained 200 feet of max D in less than 4 months and threw a max weight destroyer 740 feet at 82 miles an hour. Since then, I've had many people ask me for my strength and conditioning methodology, as well as my approach to backhand form. This will be a multi-part series where I outline the things that help me most and that I think will help you just as much. Hey everyone, hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to part 2 of the series. And this one, I'm going to be going over 3 quick and easy biohacks that I've used personally in sprinting and in disc golf that I think a lot of people could try and might get some instant benefits from, whether they're at the field working on form or even at the course playing around. So it should be a nice and quick video compared to the last one, which got pretty long. It was over 40 minutes, so I'm hoping to keep this one much more concise. And before I get into it, I want to say thanks again to everyone for all the support on all these videos, and the comment section has been super positive and wholesome, and I've been learning a lot from you guys, what's been working for you guys and what you're interested in having more content for. And this series will have more episodes coming up. I have a few ideas. For sure I want to get to form and just overall practice methodology and technical mechanics of the backhand throw. Another one I'm thinking about is flexibility and injury prevention. And then another one I'm considering and I want to see if people are interested in is my warm-up routine, and then how I kind of go into the field work and how I progress through my throwing. So if any of those sound interesting to you guys or you think would be useful, or maybe you have any other ideas that I haven't even thought of yet, please comment down below and let me know what you think, because I just want to make sure I'm making stuff that's what people need and what they're interested in. And before I get into the 3 biohacks, the last thing I want to say is I want to mention my coaching business, because I only did it at the end of the last video, and I hate to plug it at the beginning of the video, but I want to make sure I'm doing a good job of letting people know that I do online personal training, diet, strength, muscle, form coaching for disc golf, even technique for other sports like sprinting, pretty much all the above and everything in between. And I'll put my email address up on the screen. It's nick.crush@gmail.com. And you can also message me through my social media accounts. So let's get into these biohacks. I know the word biohack is kind of, I don't want to say controversial, but it kind of has a certain connotation where it seems a little bit gimmicky. And really what I'm going to be talking about with these ideas, they're for sure science-based, and there's a lot of literature to back up most of what I'm going to be talking about. But there's also a lot of good anecdote, which is super important to me, from my personal experience from them working in sprinting and disc golf, as well as just seeing other people and other strength and conditioning coaches use them, and then even in sports like golf or any throwing sport as well. So I think they're going to be pretty time efficient and hopefully really good bang for your buck to try them out. So let's get into it. All right, so the first biohack on the list is going to be to warm up our body and all the tissues that are going to be used during a disc golf throw. And real quick, I want to say for each of these 3 biohacks, I'm going to first explain how to implement it into your routine or how to execute upon it. And then after that, I'll get into the details of how it works and why it works. That way, if someone wants to skip through the video a little bit faster, they can get the most important stuff of how to actually do it, if they don't want to stick around and sit through all the explanations of why it works afterwards. So for the first one, warm up your body temperature and your tissues. This one, I hope it's not insulting anyone's intelligence or background and knowledge of how to keep their body warm and how to be safe and healthy. I might be preaching to the choir quite a bit with it, but I want to make sure I do it full justice nonetheless. And specifically, I want to kind of get into the details of how critical it is to do this properly and how big of a positive impact it can make. So how to do it, step 1, just make sure that the entire body is warm before we start throwing. But when I say warm, I mean warm but not too hot. So a little bit of sweating and a little bit of maybe vasodilation, or you can see the veins starting to get a little bit bigger, you feel warm and like a little bit of sweat coming on, is usually a good sign that your core body temperature is adequately warm and you also have blood flowing to all your extremities and your limbs. So that's a good first step. And then making sure the limbs and the extremities are warm and the joints are loose. And this is something I'll probably get into more if I do a warm-up video on my warm-up routine. But just for the sake of brevity here, making sure that we can feel warmth essentially from the center of our body all the way out to our fingertips and our toes usually means that we have a pretty comprehensive warm up for our body, and we're not struggling to maintain homeostasis within the core of our body, that kind of magic 98.6 number, plus minus. And also, I probably wouldn't be prudent if I didn't mention, if we are warming up and playing a long round or doing a lot of field work for a couple hours out in the heat, super important to stay hydrated with water plus electrolytes, because especially when we sweat, it dilutes the electrolytes in our bloodstream. And if we just drink, slam a bunch of water with no electrolytes, we'll get a bunch of water into our body, but our electrolyte concentration in our bloodstream will go down, and that can be unsafe for heart health, which would be, the worst possibility if it got extreme. But it also can reduce performance of the nervous system and of the muscle contractions. So that would be how to do this. And again, if I make a warm-up video, I'd like to get into this a lot more. But just making sure we're warmed up fully, pretty much from the center of our body all the way out to our toes and fingers. You can do that a few ways, starting off with warm-up clothes on, and then as your body temperature comes up, you can start to strip away warm-ups, kind of like how sprinters do before they get in the blocks at a race. A bunch of different ways you can do it. So I want to talk about why this is important, and kind of starting from the ground up. So our body wants to maintain an ideal core body temperature, and that's just the most efficient and safe way for the cells to operate that we live off of. But if our core temperature is either struggling to stay at, the 98.6 magic number, plus minus, because really it's a range depending on the time of the day, what happens is the body hoards a lot of blood for the vital organs, because the vital organs are the most important thing to keep us alive. And if those, get too cold, it's basically a night-night, which is not good. So what happens is that blood starts to leave the extremities and the limbs and go into the core to make sure the heart and all these important organs are functioning correctly. The problem with that is we don't have the blood and the energy factors where we need it in the extremities, the hands, the glutes, the thighs, all these muscles that are going to move us in disc golf. So by getting our core temperature up and having enough warm clothing or a proper warm-up routine that allows our body to send some of that blood back out to the extremities, the hands, the feet, all the limbs are going to get adequate blood supply, is going to improve performance and also reduce injury risk. And there's kind of like 3 reasons for that I want to break this down into for the improved performance and reduced injury risk. The first of which is going to be enhanced function of the central nervous system. So our brain and our spine, the motor cortex in our brain, which is responsible for moving our body and sending signals to muscle contractions, but also the spine, which has some motor coordination data, especially for really repetitive movements. It also is kind of the highway that has to send those signals out to the rest of our body. And when those are warmed up, they just work better. They're more alert. They're more willing to do what we ask of them. It's part of the reason why you want to cool off before going to bed, because it can help to slow down your brain a little bit and get your body physically relaxed for bedtime. And then you want to heat your body up in the morning to get, the cortisol spike, the extra body temperature helps you wake up in the morning to get going for the day. The second little thing that this breaks into is it allows for faster and more powerful muscle contractions. A lot of that is because we have extra blood in the muscles, which gives them more energy factors, more nutrients, more oxygen, etc. But it also is just the peripheral nervous system kind of knows, hey, I can go and move very fast and powerfully, and I don't have to worry about it because I have proper lubrication and energy factors and proper elasticity. And then the third reason I want to mention is, especially in a sport like disc golf, even sprinting or golf and any other motion where you're moving fast and you're doing something elastic and bouncy, the tendons are essentially like an elastic tissue. So if you imagine a tendon is like a rubber band, rubber bands don't like to be cold. They do a lot better when they're warmer. It makes them a little bit stretchier, but they can also store more elastic energy. And I'll put up on the screen the elastic stored energy equation, but it's basically going to be like potential energy in a stored spring is going to be 1/2 kx squared. And the x variable is the displacement of how much it's stretched out. So if we can stretch things out more, because that item is squared in the equation, we will get a higher rate of greater energy storage into that item. In this case, if I'm just using it as an example, I'll take my tricep tendon. When I'm coming into the power pocket, The tricep is partially operating isometrically, it's trying to hold a contraction, but I'm storing a ton of elastic energy in this. And so by this being a little bit warmer, it's going to allow for it to creep out and stretch a little bit more, but I can also store more energy in that. And then the second benefit of that is because the tendon has basically more elasticity, it can stretch out a little bit more, it reduces the peak tensile load in the tendon. So if we're going to go throw 100 throws at the field at max power, the less peak tensile load that tendon experiences during each throw is going to reduce the cumulative wear and tear on the tendon. And in disc golf, there's all sorts of elbow injuries and people get tendonitis all the time. So that's another huge reason to make sure everything's warmed up. But it starts at the core, because if we're hoarding all this blood to the vital organs, we're never going to get enough blood and heat out to the extremities. And then kind of just to tie it all together, because you might be thinking, well, why would just increasing performance and reducing injury risk on an acute basis from my throwing be so useful? And I kind of wanted to talk about the idea of how the quality of our practice reps, whether it's in the field or on the course, can affect our skill acquisition and our physical adaptations. And I think I would probably just sum it up into saying the higher the quality of our practice reps, the faster results we're going to get neurologically and also physically. So making sure that our body is in a safe position and also a powerful position when we're throwing will help us improve faster. So we'll get instant benefits of our body being in the right state, but also over time, because our reps and throws are higher quality, will also make better long-term improvements. Okay, so biohack number 2 is going to be to feel relaxed and rhythmic when we're throwing. And this is sort of almost two separate ideas, but I wanted to kind of lump them together into this one point, because these are sort of what I would think of as a very internal and psychological style cue, as opposed to a very external style cue, like trying to hit a very certain position or activate a certain muscle at a certain time. But I really, really like these, and a lot of it's inspired from my sprinting background, but I've been doing it a ton with my field work in disc golf. So the how to do this, the way I like to do it is before I start a throw, whether it's a stand throw or an X step, before I start my footwork or any initiation of the throw, I like to relax my body and mind and try to maintain that throughout the entire throw. And I know it's probably sounds a little bit abstract the way I'm describing it. So it's going to be a little bit different for everyone on how you find that relaxation in your body and mind, and also what level is necessary. Because especially with the backhand, I mean, there is a lot of big muscles that are being used at certain times. So I'm not saying to just, not use your glutes or not use your trunk muscles or your arm muscles. It's more just to have a general sense of being relaxed and rhythmic. And I want to get into the relaxed component first here. And then I'll talk about the rhythmic component, and then you can combine them together when you're throwing, or you can practice them separately. But I think they're both awesome. So talking about why being relaxed can help us in sports like disc golf. So generally speaking, we move and throw things fastest or run fastest and most efficiently when we fire the necessary muscles only at the correct times that they need to be fired. So like, for example, if it's a very baseline oversimplified example, but if I'm doing a bicep curl and I'm trying to curl a weight up, the agonist muscle that is contracting and shortening to do the work is the bicep. The antagonist muscle is the tricep, because it's lengthening for the movement to occur. Now, if I was flexing my tricep as hard as I could, it would make it harder to curl the weight up, because I'm essentially fighting the bicep or the agonist muscle. So our body is incredible at timing the correct agonist-antagonist muscle relationships at the right times, but it only has so much ability to do so under short time frames. So staying relaxed can help it find its best natural way to do that. And another thing too is disc golf has a lot of elastic fascial properties to effective throwing. And there's a lot of muscles that actually operate somewhat isometrically, but they need to contract isometrically at the right time to allow tendon rebound to happen at the right time. And a great example would be like if you watch a guy like Garrett Gurthie or Paul Macbeth, these guys that get so much out of their body and throw so far for their height, they have pretty incredible usage of their elastic fascial tissues, especially across the arm. And if you look at slow-mos, you'll see it's like ripping through their skin. You see these tendons and fascia ripping through. So staying relaxed can help those things operate efficiently and when they need to during the throw. So keeping just generally relaxed mind and body can help us find our own natural best version of that. So I like to kind of initiate that thought process right before I start the throw. And real quick, I almost forgot to give the sprinter example. So we'll just use the best sprinter of all time, the greatest sprinter of all time, Usain Bolt. He basically got, he won the 100 meter, 200 meter, and 4x100 at 3 straight Olympics, which is just astonishing. And he has the world record in the 100 and 200, so not a bad example to look at by any means. And if you look at videos of him, I'll put one up on the screen here just so you can see. He was one of the best people in the entire world at relaxing while moving very, very fast with maximal effort, to the point where you'll see his cheeks bouncing, you'll see his upper body is extremely loose even when he's at top speed. And it's really not a surprise that there was a correlation between him being one of the most skilled guys at relaxing and also being one of the best, or the best in this case, at his sport. And then for the rhythm component of this, so the way I like to do this personally is I like to feel a rhythmic progression of speed that builds from step 1 all the way through release. And it's going to be a little bit different for everyone. So I encourage you to kind of experiment around with it and see what works for you as far as a mental way to do this. But oftentimes what you see is people kind of go into the run up too fast, or they just kind of accelerate a little bit too fast when they hit the plant. So just try to feel a rhythmic progression, slow into step 1, and then the pace just rhythmically increases all the way to that final point at release where things are going to happen the fastest. And the reason this can help is kind of comes back to the human body's abilities and what it's amazing at, but also the limitations. It's really honestly astonishing how good it is at correctly timing fast muscle contractions. If you look at like the amount of milliseconds that occurs from, we'll say, the power pocket through to release, and how many things have to happen properly during that time, you're just like, I cannot believe a human body can do that, but we can all do it. The problem is it has a limit. So if we accelerate too fast in the throw and we don't have a nice rhythm that we're building through, we hit that limit early sometimes. And you've probably seen examples of it where someone just kind of blows through the brace, or they accelerate really early, they hit the power pocket early. Those are all things we can correct with external, very explicit cues. But sometimes just thinking of feeling a rhythm through the throw can basically cover all those bases of a lot of those very explicit cues that are hard to execute on. Pretty much just like that, very quickly. And I want to show an example of Simon Lizotte throwing, I'll put it up on the screen, throwing like a 500-foot, basically pure hyzer, maybe a little bit flat, but pretty much a 500-foot hyzer during a round, which is like, I don't know how anyone can do that, but you can see, even though he's throwing at pretty much his max X-step power, he has a very nice rhythm, and I'll even let the audio play in there a little bit so that you can kind of hear the sound of his footsteps and then how he goes into the plant and how quick things happen once he gets to the plant. And then I'll also show Albert Tam, who I think is a great example of this. There was a distance competition recently where he threw I think he threw over 700 feet from an X-step, and it looked like he was barely trying. It was one of the best throws and best technique I've ever seen in my entire life. But you can see he has a lot of people talk about how slow his walk-up is, but really what I see is he's allowing his body to build rhythm and allowing himself room to accelerate right when he needs to, which is when he hits the plant and when he goes through the release. So that'll be it for Biohack number 3, or sorry, Biohack number 2. Now we'll move on to 3. All right, so last but not least, we have Biohack number 3, which is going to be visualization before throwing. So, and what's interesting about this one is it's pretty commonly used on the course to visualize the line that a disc is going to fly on. But in that case, we're visualizing what the disc is going to do, which kind of helps us put the disc on the line and get it around obstacles or get it to where we want it on the fairway. But I think it might actually still be underutilized when it comes to the mechanics of our own bodies, and especially during practice in the field, but sometimes on the course as well. And so real quick, I want to kind of describe how you can get around to trying to implementing this. So the way I like to do it personally is before initiating a throw, I like to imagine how it will look and feel when I do it. So it's going to be first person imagery. So essentially the first person sensation of your body moving, how it's going to look, how it's going to feel. You're kind of imagining what you're going to perceive as you do it. So whether you're trying to implement some form cue or some form change, you're visualizing exactly how it's going to look and feel for that idealized throw that you're about to attempt. And also, it's going to sound a little bit corny and ridiculous, but you want to have extreme self-belief when you're doing the visualization. You want to 100% believe that you absolutely are going to execute on the thing that you're visualizing you're about to do with this idealized throw of yourself. And there is, I mean, believe it or not, there's actually a lot of like scientific support that being extremely confident and believing what you're doing in a way sort of wills it into existence. Maybe not in like a superstitious way, but there is a lot of interplay between confidence and dopamine and actually executing on the things that we're imagining in our brain. And a lot of the best athletes are insanely confident. I mean, you look at Tiger Woods' face and the way he talks when he's playing like a hot round at the Masters, or you look at some of these top sprinters, just the way they believe in themselves and have absolutely zero doubt that they're the best person out there. There's definitely a time and a place to leverage that when it can help us get better results and make our practice more effective. And then when you're doing this visualization and you're practicing with it, anytime you have a throw where you feel some improvement or anything clicks, right after you do that throw, allow yourself some time to visualize or to replay in your head how it felt and looked as you did it. So if I'm trying to fix something with my reach back and I just did it perfectly on some throw after visualizing it, I want to kind of sit there and kind of like let it stew a little bit. I don't want to just go straight into the next throw, because replaying it in the mind can actually help form those memories and help form those motor patterns a little bit more. So definitely take advantage of that when you have the opportunity. And then, so let's kind of get into the why this works, even though I know I've kind of rambled on about that so far. If we kind of think about the backhand, I actually think it's really underrated how difficult it is to throw a good backhand. And I think the top pros in our sport should get a lot more like mainstream respect as far as how good their motor skills are and how athletic they are. So it's really demanding. And then if we combine a difficult movement with trying to change our form and change our habits, it really is a lot to ask for to try to execute on this complex movement. And then also to change something to something that we haven't, or that is different than the 1,000 times before, is a lot to ask for. So when we visualize what we're trying to do before we throw, it gives our brain a script of sorts that it can execute on, rather than it having to just kind of freelance in the moment. We're kind of giving it a little bit of a preliminary script, which is making it a little bit easier to execute on. So it kind of reduces the mental load while throwing. And then also kind of something to build on this, because I want to talk about how dopamine interplays with skill acquisition, like backhand form practice. Anytime you have maybe something bad happens or it didn't go as planned, either with the visualization or with the form work, try to just view that as more of an opportunity to improve on the next one, rather than allowing it to kind of take the joy out of the practice for you. Because if we instead focus on all of our positive results and opportunities for improvement, it can increase our dopamine levels a little bit. And increased dopamine levels are linked pretty strongly with motor cortex plasticity and also motor learning. So we're going to learn our skills, physical and mental, faster if we're in a better mood with more dopamine, essentially. So just making sure we stay joyful about it and using as much positive reinforcement as possible, and just kind of like letting our good results soak in and kind of savoring those moments can actually have some really good long-term benefits for our practice. So that's it for biohack number 3. Okay, so that wraps up the video. I hope there was something useful or fruitful in there for some of you guys. And if there wasn't anything good, or maybe some of it just didn't really hit the mark, I promise you won't hurt my feelings and I won't have any ego tied up in it. I'd love to hear the feedback, because I know some of this stuff is a little bit more maybe uncommon to talk about in sports, or maybe it's a little bit more abstract. So again, I'm hoping that it's useful and can give you some really good bang for your buck to help with your practice or with your rounds. But if not, or maybe it's somewhere in between, please let me know in the comments, because I really want to hear the feedback. And it helps me, especially with the future videos, kind of figure out what people are looking for. So that'll do it for the video. Really appreciate you guys watching and for the continued support. Definitely planning on doing more, so I want to hear about what you guys would be interested in seeing next, and I'm hoping to kind of make the series like a nice, complete, comprehensive package of information. So, if you want any personalized coaching for your, diet, fitness, disc golf form, all the above, everything in between, I'll just put my email on the screen one last time, and I'll stop bugging you guys about it at that point, and I'll have it down in the description. So, looking forward to getting this up and hopefully helping some people, and I'll see you guys next time, so take care.